Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Inclusive 21st Century Apprenticeship Event Series. We are so glad that you are joining us this morning. We kicked off this event series with a National Apprenticeship Week event, and we are so glad to be continuing that event series here today. And today we are going to be focused on a recently registered and launched apprenticeship program that's focused on professional apprenticeships. But first, a little bit of housekeeping, just to let you know, we will have some time at the end for questions and answers, so feel free throughout the program to submit your questions through the Q&A. And I'm going to do my very best to time manage so that we save some time at the end, and I'll do my best to moderate and get to as many questions as we can. So we have a fantastic set of speakers here today, which you see up on this slide, and I'll be introducing each of them as we talk to them. And we're going to kick off with our DIR Director, Hagen, who I'll introduce in a moment. And then we are going to hear from the team at Robert Half, who's supporting employers to sign up apprentices and also hosting apprentices themselves. And we're so honored to have a Robert Half apprentice actually joining us today. So like I said, I will do my best to time manage and save some time at the end for questions. So to start off, I will introduce myself. So I am Adele Burns. I am the Deputy Chief at the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, which is within the California Department of Industrial Relations. And we're so honored today to be joined by our director, Katie Hagen, who was appointed by Governor Gavin Newsom in March of 2020, an auspicious moment, certainly, to take on a big new role. And we're so grateful to have you with us here today and in our leadership at the Department of Industrial Relations. And Director Hagen has a distinguished career in state service and has worked with a lot of different departments, including the Department of Tax and Fee Administration, the Department of Human Resources, CalPERS, Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. And I share all of these with you here today because during her tenure at some of these different departments, she's had an opportunity to pilot and launch apprenticeship programs within the public sector. So she brings both that early adopter employer perspective to this conversation here today, in addition, of course, to being the director of DIR, which houses the overall effort of the Division of Apprenticeship Standards. So Director Hagen, we're so thrilled to have you joining us here today.
Thanks, Adele. Appreciate that. Glad to be here.
Just to kick us off, I wanted to hear from you. Can you talk a little bit about how you see apprenticeships emerging as a priority, both at the state and the federal level?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. You know, in California and in the U.S., we're coming out of a tremendously challenging time. We're emerging from this pandemic and working to rebuild our economy in many respects. And we're really excited to be seeing apprenticeship become a critical employment mechanism to meeting many of the hiring and talent and employment needs right now. We're seeing such a tight talent market today for employers across all sectors. I personally can attest the public sector is just as challenged as the private sector in terms of finding talent when we need it. And it means that as employers, we need to think very differently about how we cultivate talent and develop talent. I've always thought that apprenticeship is a fantastic talent development mechanism that you know, is a really good example of a talent model that's effective and will help strengthen the California economy. In an apprenticeship, the employer is coming to the table. They're lowering the barriers to entry and the degree requirements that often pose a challenge. And, you know, an earn and learn on-ramp into organizations is really an attractive thing to offer as an employer's. You know, what better way to get, you know, work on your skills development and still be able to support your family while you're doing so. Employers that are early adopters to this model are quickly finding its value in making the business more resilient and competitive. it does a lot of things. It helps create more employee loyalty. When you invest in upskilling these folks, they tend to want to stay around and, cultivate develop in that organization. And it also helps with establishing a more diverse workplace by creating an on-ramp that is available to more folks that may not be able to afford a 4-year degree, but are absolutely, no less talented or ambitious and focused on developing a really quality career. And finally, it develops the workforce skills directly, customized to the needs of the employer. That's really the beauty of apprenticeship, from my perspective, that there are no other opportunities to really sort of customize the training that your folks are getting right when they walk through the door. And then, all of this is why in California that we're prioritizing apprenticeship. Our governor has set out an ambitious goal of serving 500,000 apprentices by 2029, which effectively correlates to doubling the number of registered apprentices in California in the coming years. So we're all going to be very busy over the next few years trying to meet that goal. And then recently, I don't know if you all heard our president, Biden, in his State of the Union talked about apprenticeship, and we're excited to be partnering to build that movement as well.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And, it's great that apprenticeship is emerging as such a priority. And you have a lot of experience as an employer with the state of California. And I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about the opportunity you see of the state as the employer of apprentices and why you think they should be, or we should be, doing more of that.
Yeah, thanks. I have had the opportunity to be part of launching a few different apprenticeship programs in the public sector. As a side note, my family has gone through the apprenticeship program, so that's also another vantage point that is kind of fun to experience. But yeah, definitely in the public sector, we've had a front row seat to how this earn and learn mechanism can work and address critical talent needs for us as employers. And it also, of course, creates opportunities for upskilling and up-leveling one's career. When I worked in the Department of Corrections many years ago, my main responsibility was hiring correctional officers for the state's facilities across the state. And one of my most favorite things to do was to go and sit and watch an academy graduation, because you got to see all the family members celebrating this newfound career, for their folks. And I've seen similar, significant moving moments, I guess you could say, in watching apprentices finish their program. When I was at Cal HR, we supported launching a few different occupations, also at Tax and Fee Administration. We worked on an apprenticeship program for IT help desk, and also an accounting financial services pilot. And they were really great in demonstrating how you could use apprenticeship in different, different kinds of occupations. The family members that I mentioned came through what we think of as the traditional side, which the construction side in apprenticeship. They were pipe fitters, my uncle and my cousin. And so in the state, I've been able to look at the applicability and work towards apprenticeship in sort of the non-traditional roles. And I think you mentioned, Adele, that when I was at Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, I actually helped launch an LVN to RN apprenticeship. And I was modeling that off of the LVN to psychiatric technician apprenticeship program. And it's It's a joint labor management program within the California Correctional Healthcare Services Department and SEIU 1000. And those apprenticeships essentially take LVNs and gives them a pathway to a registered nurse job. The program has 75% women and 80% minorities. Through this apprenticeship program, the folks increase their wages by approximately 135%. They go from earning about $42,000 a year as an LVN to over $100,000 per year as an RN through this apprenticeship program. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I've never seen a raise that significant in my career. So it was very impressive and very exciting to see the students flourish in this program. And the big takeaway, from the earn and learn model, it really benefits all involved, from the employers to the apprentices. And we at DIR are looking at how we can do more of this. And I did have one more thing to mention on the LVN to RN. We did that at CCHCS, the prison healthcare, because we could not find enough registered nurses. We had quite a number of LVNs in that local community of Stockton, which is where we were looking for them at the time. And there were no RNs. And so we built our own program and were successful. That program was started, I want to say, 8 or so years ago, and it's still going today. So super proud of that.
Amazing. I thank you so much for sharing all those examples, because I think it's a really great example of how apprenticeship as a mechanism can be used in a lot of different ways, right? Like it can be used for that entry level point in a career. It can also be used as an effective up-leveling folks from one position where you might have plenty of folks to a position where you're really needing more talent. And so it's certainly a mechanism for both of those things, creating a different on-ramp and also supporting people in up-leveling. Clearly in that context, it was in a pretty meaningful way from a wages perspective, which is pretty awesome. So you mentioned that DIR wants to be doing more to help make apprenticeship more accessible to employers. So I'm wondering if you could expand on that a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah, we really do want to make it as easy as possible for employers to sign up for apprenticeship, while also ensuring a really high quality experience for apprentices. I think sometimes people use the word apprentice a little bit loosely, and it really is important to ensure the integrity of the program. I've been working closely with our Division of Apprenticeship Standards within the department, and also with our labor agency, to develop strategies for expanding apprenticeship. And one of those strategies is to cultivate an ecosystem of apprenticeship intermediaries. An apprenticeship really is a partnership effort to cultivate a certain talent pipeline for an industry. We have many industries, of course, in California, and it means bringing multiple stakeholders to the table. In the building and fire trades, where apprenticeship is very common, it is often the union that plays the convening role. However, as we expand apprenticeship into a lot of new sectors, such as tech, professional services, healthcare, financial services, the entity that plays the convening role might look a little different, right? And so we're still identifying who plays that role in some respects. And it's this role of an apprenticeship intermediary or program sponsor that aggregates the needs, or could aggregate the needs, of multiple employers and partners, along with educators to provide the instruction, recruits and supports apprentices through their journey, and then designs and builds apprenticeship programs to meet employers' talent needs. We're thinking strategically about cultivating and convening in our regional and sectoral intermediaries. And sometimes those intermediaries are, I mentioned before, the unions. Sometimes they're the workforce development boards, colleges, nonprofits, industry associations. and staffing agencies, which is our guest speakers today are going to talk a little bit about their experience. And we're really happy to be featuring a staffing agency that's already working with so many employers to address their talent needs. And we're glad that they're entering the space of apprenticeship and doing so with a inclusive and equity lens on the work. We feel that's really a priority for us as well. And we hope to have, a whole ecosystem eventually of such organizations. And I really look forward to hearing more from Robert Half and how they're making it easier for employers to sign up for apprenticeship.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Fantastic transition here. So thank you for joining us, Katie. And we look forward, stick around and folks can, like I said, put in questions. If you have certain questions for Director Hagen, we will be saving time for that at the end. So with that, I do want to transition to welcoming our guests here from Robert Half. So first, I'm very excited to welcome Jorge Marquez. He has been a pioneer and a champion of apprenticeship in many ways, which I know one way that got sparked off was with an event that happened about a year ago, an Inland Empire Cybersecurity Consortium event that was kicked off about a year ago with our then Secretary of Labor, Julie Su, and Governor Newsom. So I know that kicked off something that we are very excited to be coming back to today, where you actually have registered apprentices now. So Jorge has been critical to this. He's the Senior Vice President for Robert Half and is the program leader for Robert Half's Apprenticeship and Workforce Innovation Solution. And of course, I know the goal of this is to develop a skilled, diverse, and inclusive professional workforce through apprenticeships. So we're so excited to be welcoming you here today and hearing about this program that you are launching. So just as a first question to you, so you're a staffing firm that's been around for over 70 years. Why did you choose to look at the model of apprenticeship as a way to develop talent?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, in addition, I'm going to mention I'm also on the Los Angeles County Workforce Development Board. So want to also just say how grateful I am to be a part of LA County and driving the development of a workforce of the future. But why did we at Robert Half choose to embark upon apprenticeships? Well, for many of the reasons Katie mentioned, we're in a labor crisis right now. Currently, there's far more open jobs than there are professional skilled talent for those jobs. And as a firm that focuses in on a placement of professionals on a consulting, contract to hire, as well as a full-time basis, we have seen those challenges come from our clients. They've told us in many different respects that it's hard to attract talent, it's hard to retain talent. In addition, it's becoming more expensive when you do hire talent to bring them on board. And finally, many organizations are focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, or as we see in environmental and social governance, the S in ESG. So how do you help raise up underrepresented communities to address some of those needs? So for those reasons, together, we decided to embark on creating a registered apprenticeship program with the state of California and the U.S. Department of Labor to address these critical challenges for our clients.
Fantastic. And tell us a little bit about what occupations you're starting off with and where are you thinking of taking this?
Well, we started off in two areas that we have some strong expertise in. One of them in accounting. So we started an accounting technician occupation, which is more of your clerical operations in accounting, such as bookkeepers, accounts payable, accounts receivable, including accounting clerical. And so those roles align with what we call our contract finance and accounting occupations. And we are seeing huge demand in that. In fact, Boston Consulting Group stated in a recent report that they expect a deficit in business, finance, and accounting occupations of about 1 million people in the next 3 years, which is going to be growing to 1.3 million years after that. The other area is cybersecurity, which is one of the fastest growing occupations across the country and in the state of California. as we see an increase in cyber threats, as the digitalization of the economy has taken place, especially accelerated during the pandemic. We've seen the demand for for positions in cybersecurity expand significantly. And the open jobs now are at about 600,000 nationwide. In just California, you're a significant amount and we're looking to address those needs in those two occupations, and we look to expand as well. So we look into as we look into later this year and into 2023, occupations in the digital space, as well as others that reflect our occupations that we serve as part of our talent solutions. So the areas might be like cloud-based technology roles, areas like web development and UX development, to other areas of finance and accounting, higher level occupations of accounting, as well as marketing, and even areas like HR, which are served by our administrative and customer support services. So we're looking to expand into all those areas of high demand with our clients.
Amazing. Some of those labor market numbers are astounding. So yeah, it just highlights how much we need to be cultivating the talent pipeline, right? And so I know that you yourself, as Robert Half, are bringing on apprentices, but you're also, of course, offering this as a talent solution to all of the companies that you work with. Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit more about what sectors and what employers you're working with so far with apprenticeship, and what reactions are you getting from employers who are the early adopters to this apprenticeship model? Yeah.
It's a great question. Well, we've set up our model as a contract to hire model. So we've been doing that business for a long time. So basically, our clients, who already work with us for contract talent or contract to hire talent, we're telling them about this opportunity to create, this new workforce, from these underrepresented communities, and, create some more stickiness, right? Apprentices actually primarily, become employees of those companies. So, for some successful programs we've been working with, we've been seeing stats in the 92 percentile as far as apprentices that become employees of those organizations. In addition, those apprentices stick around. So, they're in, we're seeing, apprentices with, again, some of our mentor companies we've been working with be in the 4 to 5 year plus range. And in cybersecurity, in a lot of the technology roles, you're lucky if you can get someone for up to 3 years. So we've been talking to our clients who are having some of those challenges around attrition, retention, and high cost of labor, and talking about this program, and they've expressed interest. The majority of the clients that have it are kind of the early adopters. They're across all sectors of industries, but primarily we're seeing it in mid-sized to large employers, and those organizations are representative of all different industries, from areas like healthcare to technology, to areas like real estate, and a variety of other industries. So it really isn't focused on one specific industry. It's a variety. I think everyone's kind of feeling the pain right now of the labor industry and these challenges in professional occupations. So what we anticipate is that the large employers, the largest organizations like the state of California, like the leading companies, Fortune 500s, are going to lead the way as they see this as a trend. Now, we do see small and medium-sized businesses also adopting this, but we see the early adopters being kind of the largest organizations. And then as those large organizations set the tone, also the small and medium-sized businesses adopting at a higher rate. So right now, we're really making this available to all organizations, but we're focusing on maybe those mid-sized to large organizations that are focused in driving some of these related goals and initiatives related to apprenticeships.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I will also say, going back to what Director Hagen was saying with intermediaries, like part of the strategy around trying to cultivate this ecosystem of intermediaries is to make it easy for companies of all sizes to sign up for this apprenticeship model. And so it's great to hear sort of your experience so far. And we're hopeful that folks like Robert Half do make it easier and easier for companies to just sign up for apprentices. So I'm curious, what is the different talent pool that a company can tap into by creating an apprenticeship? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So apprenticeships and who we reach out to and work with, can span all aspects of all different people in all different levels of skill sets. So we're working currently with community colleges, state universities, primarily as our sources for which we bring on our apprenticeship talent. So these are students who might be, say halfway through, their first year for our community colleges, and maybe in their junior years within our state universities we're teaming with. And these are people who generally need to work. They may be doing other occupations like to pay the bills, right? Maybe in a non-related industry or type of role in hospitality or another segment. And so they're working while they're going to school. And so what apprenticeships provide is an opportunity for someone to get a strong living wage who has to work, right? Maybe they don't have the resources. Maybe they're the first in their family to go to school. Maybe they are the first in their family to ever seek a professional occupation. And so this opens the door for, talent who come from those backgrounds, as well as, gives them the opportunity to have this career path where they're earning and learning simultaneously. In the community college students, for example, they're getting free education while they're in the apprenticeship program. So they have then the resources to be able to not only, take care of school, but also provide for themselves and whomever it might be in their ecosystem that they're taking care of, as well as have that direct path into that job that has certifications and also skills that have been developed over that period of that apprenticeship development. So, it really does kind of foster and develop this untapped talent pool that may in the past folks may not have had access to. We've been very intentional about our apprenticeship in the schools we work with as well, in focusing on schools that are highly diverse, that represent all demographics. And by doing so, we're able to then support those communities that those apprentices are based in uplifting their own community of maybe underrepresented talent.
Phenomenal. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm excited to transition to one of your colleagues, Clint, who is actually, so Clint Maples is serving as the Chief Information Security Officer for Robert Half. And he is also the President and Board Chairman of the Information Security Leadership Foundation and has been building security programs and leading teams for over 13 years. And very important and distinguished in this conversation is that Clint is currently employing an apprentice through the Robert Half AWI program. So Clint, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We're actually about to start onboarding our fourth cybersecurity apprentice. So yeah, it's been a tremendous program for us.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about your role and what your experience has been so far with hiring and working with apprentices.
Sure. So in my day job, I lead the cybersecurity team at Robert Half, and sort of, my night job is leading a charitable organization that helps find and develop future cybersecurity leaders. So we focus on mentorships and other assistance for people who are trying to get into cybersecurity. So it's something that I'm very passionate about, and partially for selfish reasons. The talent market in cybersecurity is it's insane right now. I think there's something like 500,000 cybersecurity job openings that are unfilled in the country right now, and something right around 1 million people actively employed in cybersecurity. So, our employment rate or unemployment rate in cybersecurity is like negative 55% or something. So you really have to start getting creative and trying to work to develop that talent pool and bring people in, because we just can't find enough people.
And I'm curious, how has having apprenticeship talent been different than other talent models that you've worked with, right? So you've been tackling this question of how to cultivate this talent pool. How is apprenticeship different?
Yeah, well, I guess firstly, it's interesting in that, I kind of came up in the trades before, going to college. I did some time working with Sheet Metal Workers Union and the UFCW and the IBEW. And apprenticeship means something very specific, like in that context in the trades, right? You kind of think like, okay, I'm getting somebody who's going to show up and I'm going to put them on the broom the first day because they're not going to know anything. So they're going to start sweeping the floors, which is how I started. And then you pick up the skills as you go, right? The cybersecurity apprentices every one of them that we have dealt with and onboarded has absolutely not been that way. These are highly motivated, driven people with shockingly deep experience in technology and cybersecurity. And it's, maybe some of that is having the benefit of getting to grow up with technology around them, but they're much deeper in those areas than I was when I first started getting into cybersecurity. So that's been one, I think, big difference as we look at that talent model. And then I think one of the challenges I had, so I'm working on my 7th year now at Robert Half, and originally was working on their consulting side with Protiviti, and we had sort of minimum requirements for consulting jobs when I started there, and that was you had to have a 4-year degree. So, when I was going to community college in Livermore at Las Positas and working full-time and going to night school trying to get my AA degree and get into these types of jobs, I couldn't, because I couldn't get an interview. They wouldn't talk to me. I didn't have a 4-year degree. And when actually then finishing my 4-year degree and starting at Protiviti and getting heavily involved in their campus recruiting efforts, continued to have that problem where we were only targeting a few sort of schools in the geographic area, Berkeley, Cal Poly, that type of thing. And you get sort of a sameness to the candidate pool that you get from that, and you're missing out on a tremendous amount of talent. So I was very fortunate when I transitioned to cybersecurity at Robert Half. The previous CISO, who was a friend of mine, had already established some relationships with the local community colleges in the Bay Area, and working with candidates coming out of their certification programs. Some of these 6 months, 8 months, something like that, were just focused on cybersecurity. And we were bringing those folks in as interns, and very quickly noticed that they were some of the best employees that we were getting. These, again, are highly driven individuals, very motivated, that really wanted to be there. And to, I think, the director's point earlier about that sense of appreciation you get, which I have. Protiviti took a risk on me when I was a non-traditional college student, right? And if there's any professors on the call right now, I apologize to you for all of us non-trad candidates. I know what a pain in the butt we can be. And that carries through, at least for me, and I think for some of the employees on my team, that hey, when I was kind of an unknown and very new in this space, you took a chance on me and continue to invest and develop in me. And we have, I think, we've had sort of 2 paths in the company where we bring non-technical folks in to help desk roles and train them up technically, and then on the internship and apprentice route for cybersecurity. And we have 7 of those folks on my team right now, and they're now managers and other highly skilled engineers and roles, and they've been fantastic. And the retention rate that we have with those people is better than any of our other employees.
Amazing. And can you talk a little bit about how having apprentices has impacted your overall team?
Yeah, they tend to raise the bar. I think it's that joke sometimes that maybe they get pulled aside after they've been there for 3 or 4 weeks a little bit, and are like, hey, you need to slow down a little bit, like hey, slow your roll, you're making the rest of us look bad. They've been really incredible candidates. I think it's anytime you get a new employee, they tend to bring with them a fresh perspective and a fresh sort of motivation, right? They're new and they're excited and they want to make a difference. And then the other huge benefit has been the diversity that it's added to the team, and in all the different sort of axes that you can measure diversity on, right? It's not just race and gender, it's socioeconomic background as well. You get different perspectives and participation and stuff from the candidates that are coming in these roles. And it really, when I first started working with Jorge and we were looking at these candidates, and I'm looking at their backgrounds, and they're, hey, I'm working full-time at night, at the diner or at Home Depot or something like that. I'm stocking shelves. I'm like, man, that was me. Like, I was cleaning office buildings and cleaning toilets when I was putting myself through community college. And there's just something about that, they just bring a different perspective, and it's really additive and helpful to the team.
And just finally, can you talk a little bit, you've spoken a little bit to this, but the talent market right now, specifically for cybersecurity, and how do you think folks should be factoring apprentices into this mix and thinking about their talent solutions and how they address the very tight market that you've described?
Yeah, it's interesting. You see some of our international partners, like I work with a lot of security startups out of Israel. A lot of your leading security products are sort of coming out of that market, and they have a cybersecurity division in their armed forces where they're bringing all these people in with no experience and spending the time and training them, right? They're spending a lot of time and money educating and developing that workforce because it didn't exist, right? And I think we have to do the same thing. We have to have programs in four-year colleges and community colleges, certification programs, almost like a trade school for cybersecurity and teaching people to do this, because we just don't have enough folks out there to fill these jobs. And as an employer, I think if you're waiting to or structuring your team or your cybersecurity program to only be compatible with people who have 4 years of education or 4 years of experience, I mean to say, in cybersecurity, you just can't be competitive, because the salary that those people are commanding and the competition for those people is intense, right? So you need to identify folks earlier in the process and invest in them, show them that you care about them and their career development, and give them a path to success and their career goals in your organization, because that's the only way you're going to be able to build a security team of any reasonable size.
Amazing. Well, thank you for championing and being an early manager and early adopter to this apprenticeship model, and really demonstrating to all of us kind of how to build this new pathway. So thank you. And I'm thrilled right now to transition us to our final speaker today. We have Jasmine joining us. Jasmine, welcome. Jasmine is currently an Information Security Analyst Apprentice with Robert Half, and she is also a junior at Cal Poly Pomona, where she's studying computer science with a focus in cybersecurity. And she is also the Vice President of Administration for Cal Poly Pomona's Information Technology and Cybersecurity Club, SWIFT. So we are so thrilled that you're joining us today, Jasmine.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, and just a reminder to folks, since Jasmine is our last speaker and we have time held for questions, so if folks have questions, please do be putting those in the Q&A as we hear from Jasmine. So Jasmine, tell us a little bit more about your journey into this apprenticeship opportunity and a bit of your background.
Absolutely. So I have always been a kid in STEM. It's like the thing. I'm very blessed to have a technical parent. My mom has been coding since you could drop your program on the ground and then have to chase punch cards across a windy street, right? So I've always known I wanted to go into tech and coding in some capacity. And when I started at Cal Poly Pomona, I was actually a CIS major, which is our more business-oriented cybersecurity major, right? And I really enjoyed that, but I came to the realization it's I miss coding, and I'm one of those people that needs to see the math to understand how something works. I'm that person that likes calculus, right? So I transitioned into computer science, and at that same time, I got involved with SWIFT, which, like you said, is Cal Poly Pomona's premier and longest running cybersecurity club. And I attribute all of the success I've made thus far in my career to my involvement with SWIFT. If there's any college students here listening, that's my biggest recommendation, is get involved. Today, reach out to somebody, right? Because of my position, I ended up at the career fair at our annual cybersecurity conference, our cybersecurity and awareness fair. Hey, if you're a college student, it's open to all schools. Come to the career fair, pro tip. And there I got to meet with Robert Half's apprenticeship recruiting team, and we started to discuss the program, and I was really excited because I love learning, and I've been working while I was in school since I was 16, and it was just such an incredible opportunity to take advantage of, and everything snowballed from there, and now I'm here.
Fantastic. So yeah, so tell us a little bit more about how your experience has been with Robert Half as an apprentice.
Absolutely. It has been incredible. My entire team is always incredibly excited to help me and answer any questions that I have. And I'm just learning so much because like Cal Poly's old slogan, right, was learn by doing, right? Because we're one of 13 polytechnic universities in the country. So we're always pro hands-on approach, right? Because you'll never get any learning better than that. And I've just learned so much and I get to build my skills and I get to contribute and help the team, which is incredibly rewarding. And they're always supportive if I have questions. No one ever looks down on me if I'm like, oh, what's that? They're like, that's kind of an elementary question, but let's go for it, right? And it's just such an encouraging learning environment and they've been absolutely wonderful.
Nice. And I understand that your journey as an apprentice is supported by both your supervisor and a mentor. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how that has played a part in your development and in your learning journey.
Absolutely. They've been instrumental to my professional growth and like of my technical skills. Dave, my supervisor, right? He's always like, what are you doing with your career? Where are you going? What resources can I provide you? And he's always giving me that extra push because I can get really wrapped up in, oh, I'm working on my club stuff. I'm working with the university. And I find difficulty setting aside time to be like, oh, let's focus on my development for 30 minutes, right? And Dave's always that person in my corner being like, no, what are you doing for your career? Which is always helpful. And he's always encouraging my interest in any like subset of cybersecurity, even if it doesn't perfectly mesh with what my team is doing. He's always pursuing those interests. And I think that's instrumental to like finding my home within the industry because cybersecurity is a massive industry with a million different options and like trying to pick the one that's right for you. It's like playing a really stressful choose your own adventure game with like real world consequences. So that support has been incredible. And then my mentor, Amelia, she's just here as like that person in my corner and she just plays off of what Dave says. And she's like, hey, remember, you're supposed to do this thing for your professional development. And they just keep me on track. And it's such incredible support in addition to what my team does and help me build my technical skills. And there, I don't think I could put a price on what I'm learning and how it's helping me grow as a professional.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing about your journey. And, I'm curious about, you're having the experience of both being in courses and also being in the work environment. And I'm curious if you can comment a little bit about like how you see those different components of an apprenticeship, of the learning on the job component versus the classroom learning component of what you're doing.
Absolutely. So I will qualify my statement with the fact that my experience in computer science is going to be drastically different than if you pursue a more business-oriented program like our CIS degree where I started, just to qualify it. But I think it's fascinating, but I'm also a giant nerd that loves learning. Like that's my thing, right? So we have a lot of cybersecurity oriented CS classes, right? And I'll be like step by step walking through an attack. It's like, oh, what happens when you capture the private key for a certificate, right? So you're like down in there in the very like basic concept that attackers use to build these things. And then I go to work and we're like, oh, there's this vulnerability you need to look out for. And I'm like, I know what all those words mean. I know exactly how that works, right? And they play off of each other because you get the fundamental understanding in your classes and you're like, oh, this is how the hardware communicates. All of these ones and zeros mean something, right? And you get those really fundamental concepts from your courses and then you go and you get to apply it. And like, I'm also a big nerd when it comes about like learning how to learn, not insignificantly because Swift focuses on cybersecurity education at every level to enable our members to like be the most competitive potential employees they can be, right? And I'm a giant proponent of active learning in the Feynman method, right? So the Feynman method says that the best way you can learn, and this is practiced by Richard Feynman, this is where the name comes from, right? The best learning you can get is by teaching someone, right? So I get to practice that at Swift. I get traditional learning from my classes, and then you get active learning, right? So active learning is when you're using information because like just reading it, not that I'm saying don't read your textbooks. That is not what we're going for here. But like just reading your textbook is not going to be high yield. Highlighting your PowerPoints is not going to be high yield. But when you're actively recalling information, when you're quizzing yourself, right? Or when you're actively applying concepts in a work environment, you're strengthening those connections. And I feel like all three, because I really do think getting involved on campus is a critical component of this, right? I think getting involved in all three together just strengthens you so much in your education, and it's also really enriching. It's also a lot easier than trying to just like muddle through it without one of the three components.
Amazing, Jasmine. Well, thank you so much. And I'm seeing firsthand what Clint was talking about in how you all are raising the bar in the workplace for everybody. So thank you so much for sharing more about your experience and for joining us today and evangelizing this model that is has the mixed component of the on-the-job time where it's like bringing that work alive, complemented by the classroom instruction that is related and connected. I really think that this is a powerful mechanism for how we can be both creating opportunities for folks and also meeting some pretty tight talent needs, as we've heard from folks today. So thank you so much, Jasmine, for sharing.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're now going to transition into questions. We do have some time for questions, which is great. So we have our first question, which is, I'm going to point towards Jorge on this one. If you could tell us a little bit about what are the supportive wraparound services that Robert Half provides to employers who join a registered apprenticeship program. So for the employers in the room that are thinking about creating such a program, how can Robert Half help them?
We created this apprenticeship with the purpose of making it easy for companies. I think, when organizations look at apprenticeships and the value it can bring, it can be, it sounds like a really great idea, but then when you think about maybe some of the work, it can sound a little daunting. So what we did is we took on that as an organization. Some of the wraparound services we provide, first, we take care of hiring the apprentice. They're our employee at Robert Half. We take care of providing our standard contractor benefits to our apprentices. In addition, we help prepare them for the role. So we provide courses and online free learning that they can do that would lead to badges that can help them prepare for being an apprentice. Once they become an apprentice, we also provide mentorship. Jasmine mentioned a little bit about this. So we have someone from Robert Half who meets with our apprentice every other week and supports them with their personal and professional development. In addition, we've created a roadmap for our clients. So our frameworks that we've built for our apprenticeship programs, which include on-the-job training, has step-by-step, various activities and things that the apprentices need to learn on the job in order to develop into a successful professional. We also have a program advisor, someone called a career advisor, who works with the apprentice, works with our client, and then works with our schools that we team with to provide the education to help the apprentice step-by-step complete all the related activities in their development from their related courses, planning for their classes, as well as working with the apprentice to see how they're progressing in those courses and on the job, and the client as well. And then we take care of all of the reporting and compliance related to apprenticeships. So really, all our client has to focus on, all the employer supervisor is working on, is selecting the apprentice as well as developing the apprentice in the day-to-day, supporting them with questions as they go along. Those are just some of the things we provide with the apprenticeship program.
Great, thank you. So we have a question here. I think I'll direct this one towards Katie to begin with, but maybe Jorge, you can chime in on this one. So the question is, I was a teacher in a large urban inner city environment for many years. My kids were so smart, but most never finished high school. Now with the pandemic, it's worse than ever. Has anyone here thought about creating apprenticeships for those who do not have a high school diploma or GED?
So yeah, it looks like I have a message that there's Nicole would like to answer the question live too. So maybe we can yield to her. We do have some youth apprenticeship programs, and that's through the Division of Apprenticeship Standards. And we do have some information on our website that kind of walks through, I think it's age 16 to 24 in most circumstances. I don't have specifics to cite on where those programs are. I suspect we'd have to, check in with local offices to check on where those high school programs are available. But it's certainly something that we would love to develop more of. We've talked a lot about that internally. How do we, expand our touch at a younger age, getting them interested in apprenticeship. I don't know, Nicole, or Adele, if you have anything additional you want to add.
Sure. I'm happy to chime in on this one. So yes, exactly like Director Hagen shared, we have a whole strategy around developing youth apprenticeship in California to try to create more visibility of the apprenticeship pathway earlier on in somebody's educational journey, so that for the folks who are not as much sort of classroom learners, have other pathways to explore, more of like a learn by doing pathway. And there are many apprenticeship programs out there that are definitely designed thinking about some of the out of school youth and how we can support them. My sense is that the example that we shared here today of the cybersecurity apprenticeship is probably not that rung of the ladder to step onto first, but there some of the work I know we've been doing with the IT subcommittee of what's called IACA, which is the Interagency Advisory Committee on Apprenticeships, is to think about how can we be laddering tech apprenticeships. And I think IT help desk is something that is a role that doesn't necessarily require as much education, but can be like that first technical job, and that there can then be that laddering of like a network analyst, and then maybe a network analyst with education and support that this earn and learn pathway can up level to a cybersecurity analyst. So as we were talking about it at the beginning, I think there's an opportunity for apprenticeship to create an earn and learn pathway up through a career, both an entry point into a career and up leveling in that career. So those are some of the opportunities that we're certainly looking at creating. And I don't know if, Jorge, do you want to add anything onto that in terms of some of your vision of the programs that you're looking to create at Robert Half?
Sure, Adele. So, we are trying to create apprenticeship programs that really create full accessibility, right, to everyone. And in teaming with the community colleges and state universities, that's what we're really driving is, providing those opportunities across our state and working with schools of all types. So for those community colleges, for example, to get into these community colleges, you don't necessarily need to have an undergrad, a high school or GED. You can just go into the program. And so what we're doing is, actually trying to take out any of those kind of prerequisites other than maybe taking one course in the field of study. And then from there, building out, the baseline skills through, assessments and through career readiness programs that we provide to help build an apprentice so that they could be ready for the job. So, we kind of provide that pathway. We're also doing programs with some of our participating schools that reach into high schools and middle schools, where we actually do info sessions on how do you get into a cybersecurity job, and helping students with kind of understanding what resources are available, what camps might be out there to competitions so that they can start to get exposure. So what we're doing is we're trying to reach earlier and make it kind of more available, readily available as far as what you need to do. And then once you go into, community college, which you don't need a high school degree or, GED to get into a community college, what do you need to do from that point then to take your career into being an apprentice? So we're even talking to students who who haven't even taken the courses that are required and guiding them on what they need to take to eventually get there.
Great. And I know I saw a question in there about a link. And thank you. I think Jorge put in the chat the link to, if you're interested in learning more about becoming an apprentice through Robert Half. The link is in the chat there for you all. There is also a question sort of diving a little bit into the specifics. What is the duration of this apprenticeship program? How many hours do apprentices spend on the job training, and how many in classroom instruction? So Jorge or Clint, perhaps you can dive a little bit into the details of what does this really look like, both for the employer and for the apprentice.
Sure. So I'll speak to the education portion and generally the length of the apprenticeship. Perhaps Clint may touch on, live as the apprentices are actually working on the job. But from an education perspective, the students are going to school, generally at least half time to full time. So while they're doing that, they're going to work on the job at least 20 to 25 hours a week. As what, at minimum, the apprentices do. Some of them work more because they're available more. Maybe they've, completed the majority of their classes at this point that relate to the apprenticeship related instruction. And then as far as the duration of the apprenticeship, it's a competency based. So it generally is based upon how long it takes for the apprentice to learn all the on-the-job skills, as well as take all the related courses and any related certifications. And then that can be somewhere in about the average of about a year. It could be plus or minus a few months, but generally about a year for our apprenticeship programs.
Great.
Yeah. For on-the-job hours, I'll say we'll take as many hours as they can give us.
Nice.
Hey, it's a holiday. We're not working today. It's not a school day. I'm like, it's not a holiday for me. Like, get in here.
Awesome. So similarly, there's somebody or related in the sort of vein of interest around the apprentice opportunity, someone who is interested in a career change. They have a 4-year degree in social sciences and always interested in computers, but due to different reasons, they ended up on a different career pathway. Their challenge now is their age. What would the challenges be for a 40-year-old woman to enter this field? How much technical background would be required to get started in an apprenticeship in that context? And
take that one.
Yeah, please go ahead, Clint.
Yeah. Well, one thing that caught my attention is you said you have a social science background. I was like, oh, that's interesting, because a lot of security teams, I like to say that in security, we're sort of, it's almost like marketing or psychological, where we're trying to persuade, change, and influence the target audience, right? So we're changing behaviors and influencing behaviors, right? So we have learning and awareness. We do simulated phishing campaigns where we're sending fake phishing emails out and trying to get people to click on them so we can sort of educate them about what to look for. So people with sort of human behavior or those kind of social backgrounds also have opportunities in cybersecurity. I will also say there's other roles that are incredibly valuable that don't require a lot of technical experience or even any technical experience. Project managers, program managers, the sort of chief of staff role that you're starting to see in a lot of cybersecurity teams, which is somebody who comes in and really just helps coordinate everything, right? And you can get into any of those roles and pick up through osmosis or working with the team the cybersecurity concepts. So I actually have a lot of folks on my team who were not sort of traditional security pathways because, again, there's just not enough people to fill those roles, right? I think there's a lot of opportunity for you there. And then I think there was a question maybe about the course load or something like that with her.
Yeah, like what would be, how could that person think about getting started in that path? Like, do they need to take courses first, or can they just get into an apprenticeship and sort of?
Yeah, there's a couple interesting ways. You could, there's some good cybersecurity certifications that people look for, like the CISSP, and studying for one of those certifications will give you sort of the mile wide but inch deep knowledge of cybersecurity, give you just enough knowledge to be dangerous and to be able to talk about it. which can oftentimes be plenty for certain roles in the cybersecurity team, or identifying a certification program or some other, like at your community college or something like that, if they have a program that you can get into where, like Jorge was saying, once you've signed up for that first class, you're eligible for the apprenticeship program. So.
Amazing.
Adele, can I mention something very quickly? I just wanted to add that I recently spent a weekend reading through reports on the challenges of adding more women to apprenticeship programs. And one thing that surprised me, looking back at 10 years of written reports, was the age of women on average is actually closer to the 30-40 time frame. So, just want to emphasize that these are not necessarily people right out of school. They are all ages, and many are contemplating career changes.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to be mindful of time here. We are at the hour. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, especially to our speakers. I want to call out in the Q&A, there were a few different shout outs for Jasmine. You are a star. Thank you so much for joining us and for inspiring all of us. You are a tremendous example of some of the incredible talent that folks can tap into by starting an apprenticeship program. So thank you to all of our speakers for joining here today. And hopefully you've come out of this conversation feeling inspired. And if you are inspired to learn more about apprenticeship, to potentially launch an apprenticeship program, or to become an apprentice, hopefully these links will help you get started with that journey. And we're so excited about creating this earn and learn mechanism into a career that, as you can see, it both creates an incredible on-ramp for folks, and also for employers, it allows you to cultivate a much needed talent pool that will bring strength and diversity and resilience to your organization. So thank you so much for joining today, and I hope you have a great day.